Thursday, August 1st, 1940. Hitler issues Directive No. 17 relating to the invasion of Britain. The air offensive is to be intensified and the preparations for seaborne troop landings are to be ready before the 15th of September. The invasion will take place between the 19th and the 26th of the month. By then, the Luftwaffe must control the skies currently patrolled by the RAF. The German Air Forces have 2,669 aircraft on active service, 1,361 bombers, 933 fighter planes, and 375 heavy fighters. Göring intends to step up the air offensive on the 5th of August, though raids on the British Isles are already intense and today sees attacks against the Thames Estuary and the Bristol Channel. In Moscow, the foreign minister, Vyacheslav Molotov, tells the Supreme Soviet that the world is divided into two blocks, Germany and Italy on one side, and the United States and Britain on the other. We Russians will remain neutral in this battle and keep our word in the treaty signed with Germany, he says. In America, President Roosevelt manages to get a bill passed to significantly increase the military budget. It will make possible the building of 200 new warships and 19,000 planes, and the equipping of more than 3 million extra soldiers. In Tokyo, the Japanese government announces it is ready to end the war in China and to establish a new order in the Far East. It ignores protests by the British government about the detention of British citizens in Japan accused of espionage. Friday, August 2nd. The Soviet Socialist Republic of Moldova is established between the rivers of Dniester and Prut, an area formerly administered by Romania. In the Mediterranean, Italian planes attack a British convoy and bomb the base at Gibraltar. In retaliation, the Royal Navy strikes the Italian naval base on the island of Sardinia. The Japanese government declares such territories as French Indochina and the Dutch East Indies to be included in the project of a greater East Asian co-prosperity sphere. It accuses the British of setting up a spy network at their embassy in Tokyo. In the U.S. Congress, President Roosevelt argues in favor of conscription, saying the nation is under threat. In Germany, the broadcaster William Joyce speaks on Radio Bremen. Better known as Lord Haw Haw, Joyce is an American with German citizenship and a fervent Nazi working for Goebbels. He claims that due to their inefficiency, the British pilots are only damaging German graveyards, while the Luftwaffe is flattening England. In Sweden, King Gustaf confidentially offers his services as a mediator between King George VI of Britain and Hitler to try to reach a peace agreement. In Poland, the concentration camp of Gross Rosen in Lower Silesia starts working as an auxiliary camp to Sachsenhausen. In the Sea War, U-99, commanded by Otto Kretschmer, sinks the British merchantmen Alexia and Lucerna and the Norwegian ship Strinda. Saturday, August 3rd. In France, the collaborationist government of Marshal Henri-Philippe Pétain, based in Vichy, sentences to death in absentia General Charles de Gaulle, the head of the Free French in exile in London. The pro-Nazi Vichy government threatens with the death sentence all members of the military abroad who support de Gaulle. If they return to the country before the 15th of August, Pétain promises to be lenient. In London, the government orders the arrest of 2 Japanese citizens accused of espionage, causing strong criticism from the government in Tokyo, which considers the detentions to be retaliation for the recent arrest of British citizens in Japan. Edward Lindley Wood, Lord Halifax, Britain's Foreign Secretary, responds to these accusations by arguing that the detentions were made as a matter of national security. Meanwhile, Canadian troops arrive in Britain, and the German Air Force intensifies its raids over the Thames estuary and the coasts of southern England. In Washington, the Japanese ambassador sends a note of protest to the American government complaining about the embargo against his country. In Africa, Italian forces launch an attack from Ethiopia on the British garrisons in Somalia. German U-boats continue their attacks on Allied convoys, and U-57, commanded by Eric Topp, sinks the Swedish freight ship Atos. Sunday, August 4th. Hitler returns to Berlin after a few days of rest at his residence of Obersalzberg-Berchtesgaden. In his office, in the Chancellorship, he meets Hermann Göring, Commander-in-Chief of the Luftwaffe, General Walter von Brauchitsch, Commander-in-Chief of the OKH, High Command of the Land Forces, Wilhelm Keitel, General of the OKW, High Command of the Armed Forces, and Grand Admiral Erich Raeder, Commander-in-Chief of the OKM, High Command of the Navy, to discuss the imminent lightning war against Britain. He is later joined by General Franz Halder, head of the General Staff of the Land Forces, to analyze the plans for the invasion of Russia. Halder suggests that the offensive be carried out along two fronts, one heading for Kiev and the other for Moscow. Several contingents of Australian troops arrive in Great Britain, while the Japanese government announces its readiness to break off diplomatic relations with Britain if Churchill does not immediately resolve the question of the Japanese citizens who have been arrested. In Africa, Italian troops coming from Ethiopia force their way through British Somalia, while their planes bomb Allied forces in Erkoit in Sudan, the airfield at Haya, and the military facilities to the south of Wajir in Kenya. In Vichy, France, Petain's government prohibits secret societies, especially Freemasonry. As far as the new French government is concerned, political parties are dead and will not be revived. Monday, August 5th. Hitler receives the suggestions for modifications of his invasion plans of the Soviet Union prepared by Artillery General Erich Marx. In the report, Marx advises that the initial attack against Leningrad, Moscow, Kiev, and Rostov should be launched by 147 divisions. Another 44 divisions are to wait behind the front lines. In Africa, Italian troops invading British Somalia take Hargeisa, the colonial capital. Speaking on the radio, Churchill expresses his concerns about these developments and warns of the possibility of an imminent German invasion of Britain. Later, he signs an agreement with the Polish government in exile, which stipulates that the Polish soldiers who have taken refuge in Britain are to be put under the orders of Polish officers commanded by the British High Command. In Germany, the OKL, the High Command of the Air Force, decides to delay the offensive against Britain due to bad weather conditions. However, the actions of the RAF and the Luftwaffe increase daily. While the Germans bomb the Thames estuary and the eastern coast of Scotland, the British attack the German industrial Ruhr area and the airfield at Krefeld. In the United States, the famous aviator Charles Lindbergh makes a speech calling on Americans to stay out of the European war. America cooperated with Europe when it was controlled by France and Britain, he says, and it can cooperate with the Europe controlled by Germany. From Tokyo, the Japanese government demands the immediate release of its citizens arrested in Britain. The remaining Japanese community in the country is advised to return to Japan. Tuesday, August 6th. In London, the British Secret Service warns the government of the buildup of German troops and ships on the Dutch and Belgian coasts. In the House of Commons, secret meetings continue, despite criticism from the press. Meanwhile, a group of pilots from southern Rhodesia arrives at the country. The Italians continue their bombardment of Gibraltar in the Mediterranean. In Japan, there are demonstrations to protest against the arrest of 2 Japanese citizens in Britain. The Japanese press calls on the government to support the independence movements fighting against British colonialism in India in retaliation. Cordell Hull, the U.S. Secretary of State, returning from the Havana Conference, declares that the United States is threatened and must urgently rearm. The Senate debates the handing over of 50 outdated destroyers to Britain, as promised in talks with Churchill, a gesture supported by the respected Army General John Blackjack Pershing. Meanwhile, trade unionists protest against the compulsory military service law proposed by President Roosevelt. In Austria, the first 392 Spanish Republican prisoners coming from France arrive at Mauthausen concentration camp. In the sea war, U-56, commanded by Otto Harms, sinks the British merchant ship Boma.